of 12 Rules by Jordan Peterson. Last week, we talked about the nature of reality being made up of order and chaos. And also, we talked about the consequence of the first sin, the fall of man. Today, we move into good and evil. So, let us begin. When their eyes are opened, hold on, let me fix this. When their eyes are opened, Adam and Eve realize more than just their nakedness and the necessity of toil. They also come to know good and evil. What possibly could that mean? What does it mean to know good and evil? What could be left to explore and relate after the vast ground already covered? They've already learned about chaos and order, for example. They've learned about gardens and snakes and disobedience, fruit, sexuality, and nakedness. For Jordan Peterson, it was the last item, nakedness, that clued him in. He was wondering, what more could they explore that they have not already explored? And the concept of being naked is what gave him the ideas that follow. Now we look. Dogs are predators. We take them as pets and give them medication. But they are terrible. Dogs and cats, they kill things and eat them. Why do we treat them nicely and treat ourselves badly? We say, well, they're predators. It's just their nature. Just meaning it's a small thing. It is in their nature. They are not evil. They are just hungry. They don't have the presence of mind, creativity, and self-consciousness necessary for the inspired cruelty of man. So in this paragraph, we ask the question, why do we admire and love and care for dogs and cats when they are, violent beings? Well, it is only their nature. They are not being cruel on purpose the way man does. They are not capable of it. Moving to the next paragraph. We, human beings, are aware of our own defenselessness, finitude, and morality. This is a difference between us and animals. Animals kill to eat, but we do something different. If we are aware of our own weakness and vulnerability, that means We know how to hurt other people. If we know how we can be hurt, then we know how we can hurt someone else. We know exactly how to inflict pain on others. Not only that, we can also terrify people. We can scare people. We can inflict psychological harm. This is more evil than dogs and cats. We can do this consciously. We can do it intentionally, not just as the accident of killing to eat. We can hurt and humiliate other people for faults that we understand only too well, because these faults are in us. We can literally torture other people, slowly, artfully, and terribly. This is far worse than predation, than being a predator who must kill to eat. We can be truly evil because we have self-consciousness. This is a big problem. He puts it cataclysm as large as the development of self-consciousness itself. As big a step as it was for us to wake up, now to become consciously evil is a similarly huge step. And it is part of the as yet unhealed fracture in the structure of existence. It is not healed yet. It is a problem in the goodness of creation. The fact that we can do evil consciously and artfully. All of this is because of the development of self-consciousness. Next paragraph. Only man could conceive of the rack, the Iron Maiden, and the thumbscrew. These are all devices of torture. These are all ways that man inflicts pain and psychological damage on people for its own sake, because where the pain is the goal. Only man does this. And that is the best definition of evil Jordan Peterson has ever been able to formulate. The willingness and ability to inflict pain on purpose on others, with that being the goal. He points out that this is a semi-divine capability, and that it is proof of something called original sin, which modern people don't like to believe in. Original sin is defined as the tendency toward evil in mankind. He goes on to suggest, who would dare to say that there is no element of voluntary choice in our evolutionary, individual, and theological transformation? He is suggesting that we are morally responsible for being this way. He supports it by saying our ancestors chose their sexual partners, and they selected for what? Consciousness, self-consciousness, moral knowledge. In other words, if our early ancestors were interested in selecting for moral virtue, maybe we would be a different kind of person. Maybe there was something attractive in a spice of evil in the females that our ancestors chose, or in the males that our first mothers chose. That's what he is saying. Also, he says, who can deny the sense of existential guilt that pervades human experience? In other words, he is looking at the question, are we responsible for our own evil? Or are we like dogs and cats, it's only instinct? He is saying we may be responsible. One proof is that our early ancestors chose partners, sexual partners, that led to this evolution. The second proof is that people everywhere feel guilty. If people everywhere didn't feel guilty, maybe it would be because we aren't guilty. The fact that we feel guilty is evidence that we are guilty. And final piece of proof. Any person who does not have guilt, he is without this pervasive sense of guilt, is a psychopath. Usually it is only psychopaths who do not feel guilt within themselves for their own evil. Next paragraph. Human beings have a great capacity for wrongdoing. We can and do make things worse voluntarily. This construction, we can and do, emphasizes the reality that man makes things worse voluntarily. We could think of many examples of how people make the world worse voluntarily, on purpose, with full knowledge of what we are doing, or carelessly. In other words, on purpose or carelessly, we make things worse. We are culpable. And given that terrible capacity for malevolence, is it any wonder that we don't respect ourselves enough to take care of ourselves? We know the evil within ourselves, and we think, why should I take medicine and preserve this evil life? That's the idea. The rest of the paragraph goes on to support this. He points out that thousands of years ago, Mesopotamians believed that mankind came from the blood of Kingu, a terrible evil monster, which was a child of the goddess Chaos. And if mankind is the child of chaos and a vengeful monster, then of course we are going to question the value of ourselves. In fact, we might question the value of being itself. Notice the capital B for being as an abstract reality. Again, who could be faced with illness in himself without doubting the moral utility of prescribing medicine? If you think that humanity is evil, then you will think that it is not good to preserve individual life. And the final sentence in here points out that from an individual perspective, you know the evil in yourself. And you think, why should I even bother taking good care of my own self if I am as evil as I know myself to be? Perhaps man is something that never should have been. Perhaps the world should be cleansed of the human presence. And all being and consciousness can return to the innocent brutality of the animal. So, in other words, the highest consciousness would be dog and cat killing to eat, rather than man torturing and killing for sport or fun. He ends this section by saying, the person who claims never to have wished for this has either not consulted his memory or not consulted his darkest fantasies. I wonder, have you thought maybe the world would be better off without mankind? Maybe mankind should go away. Now we move on. Oh, last thing. What is to be done? That is the big question. If man is this evil, what should be done? Now we move on. The spark of the divine. This is where I start feeling good about this rule. In Genesis 1, God creates the world with his divine, truthful word, generating habitable, paradisal order from the pre-cosmogonic chaos. So God speaks a true word, and out of chaos comes order, comes paradise. Then he creates man and woman in his own image, giving them, imbuing means giving, them the capacity, the ability to do the same thing, to create order from chaos and to continue his work. So God has created the man and woman with the ability to do what he just did. He just created using his words. Now we can create order and beauty and paradise from chaos through the true word spoken. And after creating this man, God pronounces him very good. After creating everything, he said it was good. After he created man, God truthfully said, this is very good. Moving to the next paragraph. The juxtaposition, the putting together of Genesis 1, which we just spoke of, God creating man in his image, very good, with Genesis 2 to 11, the fall of man, creates a profound narrative situation, unbearable in its profundity, the goodness of man and the fall of man. The moral of Genesis 1 is that being, with a capital B, is brought into existence through the true speech that is good. This is true of man himself before his separation from God. But his goodness is terribly disrupted by the events of the fall. And what happens afterwards. He lists several stories. Cain and Abel, which is the story of the first murder. Cain was the eldest son of Adam and Eve, and he murdered his brother Abel, who was their second son, because of jealousy. And the story of the flood. Everyone knows God destroyed every animal and person in the world except for Noah, because they were all evil. And the Tower of Babel. So these are the stories in Genesis 2 to 11, showing the disruption of the goodness of man as he fell into evil. But even so, we retain an intimation of the prelapsarian state. In other words, we have a piece of a memory, a dim recollection of how we were before we fell, prelapsarian. We remember, so to speak. So to speak means not literally. We do not literally remember, but we sort of remember, so to speak. That's the function of the phrase, so to speak. We remain eternally nostalgic for the innocence of childhood, the divine unconscious being of the animal, the untouched, cathedral-like old-growth forest. So we remain nostalgic. So there is something in man that thinks back and really longs for innocence. We find respite in such things. So we find rest in beautiful forests that are untouched, in simplicity. The original state of nature, before being touched by man, conceived in this manner, is paradise. But the truth is, we are no longer one with God and nature. The truth is, after the fall of man, God and man were separated and estranged. And the situation today is not one of unbroken unity between God and man that we wish for. There is no simple turning back. There is no way for us to return to our innocence in a simple way. The original man and woman, hold on. The original man and woman were not conscious and not self-conscious. Their eyes were not open. Get this. In their perfection, they were less, not more, than their post-fall counterparts. So we say Adam and Eve were perfect, but they weren't really perfect, because after their eyes were open, they had something more than what they had before. It was as though they were asleep before the fall. Before the fall, their goodness was bestowed upon them, given to them as a gift, not earned. They exercised no choice. They had no freedom. And that's easy. That's easier. It's easier to be good if you have no sin nature. But maybe it's not better than earning your goodness. Maybe free choice matters. Now he goes on to say, who can speak with certainty about such things? But I am unwilling to take these questions off the table. So, the question is, would it be better to be like Adam and Eve before the fall? Or is it better to have our eyes open, to have free choice, and to choose good freely? That's the question he is raising. So he makes a new suggestion. Here he says, here is a proposition. Perhaps it's not simply the emergence of self-consciousness and the rise of moral knowledge of death and the fall that besets us and makes us doubt our worth. Perhaps instead it is our unwillingness to walk with God, despite our fragility and our propensity to do evil. So he is now saying, maybe it is not our capacity for evil that makes us bad, but our laziness and our moral fault that we don't choose to walk with God. Maybe it is possible for us to choose to walk with God. The entire Bible is structured so that everything after the fall is a remedy for the fall, a way out of evil. The question is there a way out of being evil so that we will be freed of this weight of guilt? Everything in the Bible is part of humanity's attempt, God willing, to set itself right. So now we have man trying to correct the evil that he rightly sees within himself. And what would that mean? What would it look like if man were to correct the evil? And this is the amazing thing. The answer is already implicit in Genesis 1. To embody the image of God is to remedy evil. To speak out of chaos the being that is good, but to do so consciously. So we are to fulfill our purpose that God gave us to continue the creative act in His image. This was given before the fall, but now we can still do it consciously as a choice. Back is the way forward. T.S. Eliot wrote a poem, actually lots and lots of poems, but this is the end of the last poem in the 4 quartets. I am not terrific with poetry, but this is full of images. I will read it to you and I will mention what I know of the images. Maybe you are good with poetry and it will speak to you, but I'll read it to you. It's very famous. Hold on. Oh dear. Okay, now it's going to work. Yes. Okay. We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. Through the unknown, remembered gate, when the last of earth left to discover is that which was the beginning. At the source of the longest river, the voice of the hidden waterfall, hold on, and the children in the apple tree. Not known, because not looked for, but heard, half heard, in the stillness between two waves of the sea. Quick now, here, now, always, a condition of complete simplicity, costing not less than everything. And all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well, when the tongues of flames are enfolded into the crowned knot of fire, and the fire and the rose are one. From Little Gidding, the Four Quartets. Let's go back to the beginning of that, and I'll just tell you what I know of the images, and maybe it can speak well to you. Okay, the first 4 lines are very, very famous. We shall not cease from exploration, and at the end of all of our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. So we start and we know nothing, just like Adam and Eve in the garden. And then we go out and explore. We go into chaos. And as we explore, we bring order and we understand. And we explore everywhere, all of the chaos. And finally, the last thing that we explore is the place where we first started from. And now, with all the knowledge that we gained in our travels, we now know the place of our origin for the first time. Through the unknown remembered gate. We sort of remember it. We have a little nostalgic intimation, but not really. The gate out of Eden. Through the unknown remembered gate, when the last of earth left to discover is that which was the beginning. At the source of the longest river, the river Nile in Egypt was the cradle of civilization, the first place. The voice of the hidden waterfall, we have Victoria Falls at the source of the Nile. Water is an image of hope in Eliot. And the children in the apple tree. The apple tree obviously is in Genesis. Eating the apple was the fall, but here we have children playing in the apple tree, climbing it. It is no longer a place of terrible judgment. It is now a place of safety and innocence. Children innocently playing in Eden. Not known because not looked for, but heard, half heard in the stillness between two waves of the sea. So this simplicity, this innocence, is something we can hear when we are in the simplicity of nature. A condition of complete simplicity, costing not less than everything. Generally, when we think of a simple life, it does not cost much. Poor people live simply. This kind of simplicity is not like that. This simplicity is hard won and costly, and you had to give up everything in order to achieve it. And all shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. This is a quote from Julian of Norwich, a Christian mystic, about the goodness of the world. When the tongues of flames are enfolded in the crown not of fire, and the fire and the rose are one. Tongues of flame is an image from the birth of the church on Pentecost, when the Holy Spirit came into mankind and changed his heart, took his heart of stone and gave him a heart of flesh, that he might know God. That's in the book of Acts, chapter 2. And then in T.S. Eliot, fire is a symbol of pain and purity, and roses are a symbol of life. So the pain and the purity and life are one. At the end of the journey, when you have made sense of all chaos and have come back to your starting point. If we wish to take care of ourselves properly, we have to respect ourselves. But we don't, because in our own eyes we are fallen creatures. If we lived in truth, with a capital T, if we live in the truth, existentially, in truth, and if we spoke the truth, capital T, then we could walk with God again and respect ourselves and other people and the world. And then we might treat ourselves like people we cared about. So the key is to walk in truth, God's truth, and also to speak truth and to walk with God. This will yield self-respect so that we will begin to think we are worth caring for. In the areas where Christianity emerged thousands of years ago, 2,000 years ago, people were a lot worse than they are now. There was human sacrifice. There were sports that were competition to the death. Spilling of blood was commonplace. Now, the probability that you or I will ever kill anybody or be killed is really low compared to what it used to be. In the past, the primary moral issue was control of the violent impulses of people. But now, hold on. But now we have another problem. And that problem is basically guilt. The problem is shame. Hold on. The cynicism which makes people think that all people are bad is very common and fashionable. It's common and fashionable to believe that all people are arrogant, egotistical, and selfish. So, unlike people in past millennia, we have a problem of people not valuing themselves at all, instead of inflating their own value. And people believe they don't deserve care. They are excruciatingly aware of their own faults. Most people believe that others should not have to suffer. Other people should not have to suffer. And they will work diligently to help alleviate it. But they don't believe it of themselves. Let me just see something. So, in the West, we have the idea of virtuous self-sacrifice. And that is because we follow Jesus, who sacrificed himself. We are influenced by Christianity. However, Jordan Peterson wants to make a point that will be unpopular. He wants to make the point that sacrificing, that the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, does not mean sacrificing yourself for others. He wants to make the point that if you sacrifice yourself for others too much, then you are enabling bullies. You are creating an imbalance. He wants to make the point that the best good is when all people are valued at full value, not for you to put yourself down in favor of putting someone else up. So, we should not victimize ourselves in the service of others. If we do, we are supporting tyranny, and that is not virtuous. It is not virtuous to be victimized by a bully, even if the bully is you. So if you yourself don't take good care of yourself, then you are functioning as a bully. We are running out of time. I had hoped to finish this rule today, and there is actually no good stopping point between now and the end. So I think we will simply stop here and pick it up on this point and move straight through to the end on the next lesson. So your takeaway from today is there is a way out of evil. And it has something to do with functioning in the image of God. The fact that we are in the image of God is our hope. So, think about that this week. Live into that this week. And I will see you next week.